am so glad you joined me today for our topic, which is cold process soap making. This is a super fun project that can be a little daunting because of the use of lye, which is a caustic chemical, which it's a highly basic solution, so it will cause chemical burns if you get it on your skin or in your eyes, any contact with your soft tissue. But if you use caution when using it and protection, it is safe to work with. And what's so cool is that you can work with oils, ingredients of your choice, and make soap. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. There are a lot of components and a lot of steps, and they move pretty quickly when you're making soap. I'm going to first start with the materials that you'll need, and I'm going to provide a list of my favorite recipe, and also show you a book that I like. This is the book. The recipe I'm using today is one that I just printed from the internet, and it's just a really nice go-to with pretty simple materials. Olive oil, coconut oil, and palm. I am looking for palm oil. I try and find where it's sourced, and so that's something that you might want to keep in mind. The thing with palm oil is it's a really hard oil, and so it is what is really key in making a good soap. The other option is to use an animal product such as lard or tallow, which is from cows. Lard is from pigs, and it's just the fat from both of those animals. The issue with using either of those animal products, which I think is great because we're using all the parts of the animal, so even if you're vegetarian, at least you're using those parts that would otherwise go to waste. So, but the issue with using those, in my experience, is that they make a more brittle bar of soap, and I just really like the consistency that I get when I do use palm oil. And I've tried to use all olive oil, which is what you call a Castile soap, and that will give you a relatively hard bar of soap as well. But the minute you start adding other soaps with that olive oil, such as coconut, adding other oils such as coconut or grapeseed or sunflower, unless you add palm with that, they're gonna get really, really soft and mushy. So you'll notice I'm wearing my glasses today, and as you can probably see, I can see the glare in the camera. But it's important to have eye protection. You should have hand protection as well. I've done this so many times that when I'm working with a lye, I keep it off my hands. If I do get it on my hands, I rinse it with water. The key with lye is it's a powder form, and there are different brands that you can get. I get mine on Amazon, and I get it from Essential Depot on Amazon. And I get a 2-pound bottle, which should last for many batches. You add the lye to the water versus the water to the lye. So you're adding something that is more concentrated to less concentrated versus the water to the lye, because you could get theoretically a intense chemical reaction. I think possibly explosion. So we're gonna be measuring out the water, and when we're combining the water and the lye together, you're gonna slowly add the lye to the water. You're not gonna pour all the water into the lye. With this recipe, a fairly big recipe, which I like. So with the recipe that I have provided for you today, I use these 2 molds, which I also got on Amazon, and it will fill these 2 molds. We're gonna need 16 ounces of the coconut oil, 16 ounces of palm, 16 ounces of olive, and then some castor oil. And as far as the water, it's giving a range. I usually choose about in the middle, so it's 13 to 19 ounces, so I'm gonna give about 15 ounces of water. And with the lye, I'm gonna do about 8 ounces. So I have a scale, also got on Amazon. Put my container on my scale, and I'm going to tare it, which means I'm going to zero it out so the bowl is not counted in the measurement. So I'm just gonna tap it twice to zero it out. T-A-R-E is tare, which is something we used in chemistry. Okay, so now it's at 0. So now when I add my water, it will not count the bowl in the measurement. So I'm going to add 8 ounces water. I don't know if you can see this. Oh my goodness, making a mess. That's pretty typical. Okay. We're at about 8.4. Because it is a range, that's totally fine. And usually I like to use a reusable towel, but because we're working with so many oils today, I like to keep a few paper towels on hand just because I don't want to saturate all my towels with oil because they're hard to get out in the wash. Okay, so I've got my water ready. And then when I measure my lye, I'm going to use this container for my lye, and I'm going to zero that out. We're going to tare that out again at 0. And when I measure my lye, I'm just going to keep it in this container. And notice I'm doing my lye before I do anything else. And the reason for this is the lye is going to heat up. Oh, and somehow I got my units wrong here. So I'm going to tare this, zero it out, and then I'm going to add my lye. And we need, we're going to do a 7.4 ounces. I'm going to make it 7.5 since I added just a smidgen extra of water. Now, I'm going to keep my lye in here because I have this nice spout here. That is going to enable me to, I'm going to power off my scale. That is going to enable me to add it slowly to my water mix. So the reason why we are making our lye and water solution first is because the lye solution is going to get very, very hot when it reacts with the water, or the solution will be very, very hot because it is a chemical reaction. And this is probably the most dangerous part of the soap making process. And so what we want to do is get this started quickly because it takes a while for it to cool down. And so we want it to cool down to about 90 degrees before we add it to our oils. And so, and we'll want our oils to be about the same temperature as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and start adding these together, or adding the lye to the water very slowly. And something I forgot to mention when I said that you need your materials, having a candy thermometer is very helpful so you can keep an eye on the temperature. And so I like to do this underneath a hood or by an open window, just because you're going to create some vapors that are pretty smelly and not great for you to breathe. So very slowly and stirring, and I'm not wearing gloves here. I'm careful not to splash. But this is going to get very hot. You'll notice some steam rising. And I'm going to take my solution and I'm going to take it away from my work area in a safe place by measuring our oil. So I'm going to make the entire soap batch in one batch, and then I will divide it, kind of eyeball it into 2 bowls, and then we'll add our colorants and then our scents last. And then we will add the lye and then pour it in our molds. Super easy. So first we have 16 ounces of coconut oil. And even though this recipe says 16 ounces of coconut, oil, for example, as long as you have the 16 ounces of palm oil, you can play around a little bit with the types of oils that you use. So for example, I had some kukui nut oil from our trip to Hawaii. I had 2 ounces of that. So I'm going to supplement that with my olive oil. So I am going to, or actually I'll supplement it with my coconut oil. So I had 2 ounces of that. So I just added 2 ounces, I'm gonna move the camera down here, 2 ounces of the kukui nut oil. And then I have my big tub of Nutiva coconut oil in my tub here. And then I need to put in 14.2 ounces of this. And what's so cool about soap making is that if you have an oil that is old and starting to turn rancid, you can use it in soap. So I have just a little bit more coconut oil to go here. All right, we're at 16 ounces. And then we have 16 ounces of palm oil. And my palm oil, I actually got it in a bottle, which was less expensive, and it's certified sustainable. I didn't tear this like I should have, so I'm gonna have to keep this. This will be 32 ounces once I get this in here. And it's a little bit cooler in my house today, so it'll be interesting if I'll be able to get this out of here. So I'm gonna actually zero this out, but I'm gonna supplement my olive oil with some sunflower oil and just a little bit of grapeseed oil. Just because I have it. And then the rest of that we'll do with the olive oil here. Okay, and we're at 32. And the reason why I used a little bit more lye and water than what was in the recipe is because I usually overshoot my oils by just a little bit. And by using a little bit more lye, you'll have a little bit harder bar of soap, and you can, that's why they give a range in the recipe. So now I've got a couple ounces of castor oil, and I am a little bit over on my oils, and my lye was not over by much, so I'm gonna undershoot my my castor oil by just a touch. I'm gonna stir this up, and then I'm gonna put it in my microwave, and the goal is to try and heat it up to about 90 degrees. So I am just stirring this, and I'm carefully going to transport this. I usually find if I can put it in my microwave for just a couple of minutes, and note that I haven't added any of my add-ins, and I haven't added any of my essential oils yet either. I'm gonna wait to do that when I've separated it into 2 separate containers, and we do that last after I've added the lye. Okay, our lye is finally down to 95 degrees. And now you know why I started this so early. It takes a long time for this to cool down. So I'm gonna get my water bath out of the way here. So now both of my solutions are the same temperature. And if you get any oil into the lye, you will start the saponification process. You'll actually start making soap. So you don't want to contaminate, get lye into your soap or into your oil or oil into your lye. So what we're going to do now is add the lye slowly into our oil. So I'm gonna go slowly and stir as I'm adding. And the amounts in that recipe just barely fit into my bowls here. So I'm just going to hand stir this. Normally, when I use a hand mixer, I stir this in the sink in case there is any splattering, just to avoid it getting on my clothing. So I'm gonna move us to the sink here. So I'm in the sink now, and I have a dedicated hand mixer that is strictly for soap. And something that I forgot to mention, soap making, something that I forgot to mention is all of my materials are all plastic because the lye is corrosive, and so it can be corrosive to metal. Will be corrosive to metal. This is metal. I just make sure I rinse it with water right after I'm done. So I use a pretty slow speed because the faster you go, the quicker it'll mix and the less time you have. So I'm gonna use a slow speed here. And what I like about this mixer is I can take apart this to clean it. My previous mixer, I couldn't do that, and it just it broke down quickly, because again, when you're working with all these caustic materials, you want to be able to break it down and clean it. So I'm trying to mix the two parts together, and the question is, when do you know your soap is ready? And this is so fun, because you're going to see the transformation occur, and you'll start to see peaks and valleys, kind of like when you're whipping egg whites, with some texture on the surface. So I'm going to stop and actually pour it into my, try and pour some of this into my other bowl. And I could have done this earlier, but it was so liquidy, I didn't want to make too much of a mess. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball here or guess what half is. I could measure it. We're going to do the lighter soap first. And this is my citrus mixture here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just mix. So that means that we're ready to pour. And again, the trace is when I can run my spatula through here and it's actually thick, kind of like a custard, and you can see what we call a trace. All right, so we're ready to pour. And again, this material is still caustic, so you want to keep it away from your clothing, from your hands. Use gravity here to help us flatten it out, and I'll put that out to the side. So it is ready to add our colorant and the other additives. I'm going to add my charcoal powder, lavender, a little bit of bentonite clay. I'm not going to add all of what I measured, and then my essential oil. And the charcoal is exceedingly dusty, so as you can see, so use caution when using your hand mixer. I kind of like to get it underneath the liquid. Don't breathe any of it or inhale any of it. One of my favorites. The charcoal acts as a nice exfoliant, and it also, I like the color too. And what I'm going to do here is drizzle some of this pretty natural color. Okay. And so we are going to let these cure for, again, anywhere from 10 days to 3 to 4 weeks. And I am going to have another video on how to cut these. And you can actually cut these and take these out of the mold in a couple days. And so it's super exciting, and it's fun because you can make different shapes, different sizes. I like a big bar of soap because it seems like it's hard to find big bars of soap. They're all tiny. They've gotten smaller and smaller. So we're going to do that next time. And so until then, thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your day, and happy soap making. Be safe. Bye-bye.